what's happened over the last 72 hours or so has been in regards to the legal uphill battle that Trump and GOP lawyers and legislators across the country have been engaging in. I mean, it's going nowhere fast. But what people seem to misunderstand is that they think Trump has personally brought like 24 lawsuits to bear, and that's not the case. What's happening is that the few remaining GOP Trump loyalist types are rallying to his side and taking up the same rallying cry, as it were, and trying to file lawsuits around the country. But Trump's team in particular, they're going after particular states, particular counties, yada, yada, yada. So what we have here is what's been going on in Pennsylvania, which is a very important battleground state, as we well know. And what's occurred is that on the 21st, there was an attempt by a Republican council member to appeal to the lower courts in Pennsylvania to halt the certification of their election results, thereby preventing them from attributing electors. So, where to begin? All right, so check this out. In 2019, Governor Wolf, a Democrat, with a GOP-controlled state house and Senate, got a bipartisan voting reform bill signed. So let's just go over this briefly, just for a second here. Governor Wolf made voting more convenient by securing and secure by signing Act 77 of 2019, the most significant improvement to Pennsylvania's elections in more than 80 years. The bipartisan compromise legislation takes effect for the April 2020 primary election and makes Pennsylvania a national leader with voter-friendly election reforms. Well, certainly a national leader. I'm not. And here's the thing: if it were as voter friendly as claimed, they wouldn't have. Because see, the thing is that as we will see later on, the judge's ruling wasn't that the lawsuit brought by the Republican council member or lawmaker was irrelevant or unjustifiable. It was just too late. They waited too long, and what it is that it was very evident that the only reason this lawsuit was being brought to bear was in relation to the 2020 election. That isn't to say that there aren't valid issues, that being the issue of cured ballots. Apparently, the process by which ballots were cured was a partisan effort. Democrats basically controlled and cured Democratic ballots, and Republicans controlled and cured Republican ballots. Of course, then one has to ask, well, if that's the case, party and process is the issue. The process that the party implements is the issue. I personally think that's a horrible way to break down what's supposed to be a bipartisan, or really a nonpartisan effort. The counting of votes, irrelevant of who they're voting for, is the point. But I digress. The law creates a new option to vote by mail up to 50 days before an election and be placed on a list to permanently receive a ballot application by mail. That's where the issue in hand comes to. Cured ballots are what happens when a ballot request has been made and then a ballot is sent, and then the ballot is sent back and there's something wrong with the ballot, so it's cured and sent back out. Or rather, it's cured and corrected at on site, I believe. I don't believe it's sent back out. They actually confirm information and cure it on site. It could be misquoted, but I'm fairly like 90% certain that that's how that goes. This bill makes voting more convenient and more secure for millions of Pennsylvanians and continues my commitment to modernizing our elections, said Governor Wolf. This is the biggest change to our elections in generations and will strengthen our democracy by removing barriers to the voting booth and encouraging more people to vote. I applaud all of the legislators and stakeholders for their work with my administration and their spirit of compromise. Increasing the opportunity to vote increases turnout. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO, in 2016, providing more days to register to vote and no excuse mail-in ballots increased voter participation by more than 4%. That's nearly 250,000 votes in Pennsylvania. No excuse mail-in voting. The law creates a new option to vote by mail without providing an excuse, which is currently required for voters using absentee ballots. Pennsylvania joins 31 other states and Washington, D.C. with mail-in voting that removes barriers to elections. So then a 50-day mail-in period. Here is permanent mail-in and absentee ballot list. Voters can request to receive applications for mail-in or absentee ballots for all primary, general, and special elections held in a given year. Counties will mail applications to voters on the list by the first Monday of each February. Voters who return an application will receive ballots for each election scheduled through the next February. Pennsylvania is the 12th state to provide voters with the automatic option. Also extend the mail-in ballot date. Their deadline used to be 5 p.m. on Friday before an election, which is the most restrictive in the country, which I had no idea of. So keeping that in mind and giving a little bit of context, what ended up happening is this Republican congressman sought to, that's the news coming in every day. Trump paid Wisconsin recount. Just in, Wisconsin recount added 87 votes for Trump. You see, these efforts, these monumental efforts, they do have results. Republican congressman seeks court order, throwing out all mail. See, here's the thing. It isn't about necessarily increasing the number. It's about pursuing your constitutionally delegated and your there's a term I'm looking for here. It's your constitutional right as an incumbent president to be able to challenge the election. The problem is whether or not your challenges impede the ability of the country to function. And that's arguable, right? Because most recently, the government, it's like the most recently, it was determined that it was mathematically unlikely that Trump would be able to win the election, even with a contested victory on his part. And so, what is it? A contingent victory. There we go. And so it was decreed that it was okay for the Biden administration to begin the transition. Now, here's the thing. No one has even heard of this office. I'm having an issue remembering what the name of this office is. But they are important enough to not only exist, but to have movements occur once they come out and say something. So they come out and say, all right, well, it seems very clear that Biden's going to be the winner. We're not a news agency. We don't belong to any state or any party. This is a government office that oversees elections. And that's what we decree. And with that, then you saw movement both on Trump's part and which, again, your legal capacity to challenge the election should not supersede your obligation to keep this country functional. So you have Trump's day-to-day team, you have the transition team, and then you have the legal team that's taking care of the uphill battle, the court challenges. All three work separately and independently of each other. There is no reason why you couldn't have conducted your transitional business while also challenging the election. Conducting himself as he did is beyond petty and is also dangerous. But another conversation. Let me finish this. In a last-ditch effort to halt certification of Pennsylvania's election results next week, one of President Donald Trump's biggest boosters in the state filed a long-shot lawsuit Saturday seeking to disenfranchise at least 2.6 million voters by throwing out every mail ballot cast in the November 3rd election. Now, this was last Saturday, because today's the 29th. Right. In his filing before Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court, Butler County Republican Mike Kelly argued that the 2019 law passed by the state's GOP-controlled legislature, and mind you, that's the irony, is that this GOP congressman has stepped up to the side of Trump, to Trump's aid, to challenge a GOP-passed law, like a law that was passed under a GOP-controlled state legislature. And I was talking with somebody, and I just found the irony that had this lawsuit had won, in length, because as we'll continue to read, They do end up halting the certification, right? But it literally lasted 15 hours. No, no, a little longer than 15 hours. It lasted 3 days. Okay. But it was just the irony of something like that would have been, I think, too much to bear. Right? GOP creates a law that then a year later they end up challenging, which allows them to according to a lot of people, to usurp the presidency. He asked the court to bar the state from certifying any election results that include mail ballots, or alternatively, to throw out all votes cast in the election entirely and appoint the state legislatures to choose the delegates that will award the 20 electoral votes. That latter idea has become increasingly popular in GOP circles as Trump has refused for nearly 3 weeks to accept his loss to President-elect Joe Biden. It's not like him coming out and saying, "I lose," has any sort of jurisprudence. It's just the same thing as mainstream media coming out and declaring a winner of the race, something they've been doing for, I don't know, something like 70 years, 80 years, probably longer. They have no legal standing. That's not part of the constitutionally mandated process. It's just something that we as the public are used to. And God forbid, as humans, we break our cycles and habits. In fact, the president's campaign has sought a similar remedy in another lawsuit currently awaiting a ruling from a federal judge in Williamsport. And I also would like to point out that they at least make the distinction, the Inquirer, between the president's legal team and any other legal challenges that are occurring across the country. But a wide array of Republican, Democrat, and nonpartisan election law experts have agreed that the request has limited basis in law, and that it is unlikely any court would adopt such a sweeping intervention. Under state law, Governor Tom Wolf is bound to select electors to the Electoral College based on the winner of the state's popular vote once the results are certified. So the Pennsylvania lower courts did side with that GOP congressman. November 25th. President Trump's legal fight over the November 3rd election scored a rare win on Wednesday when a Pennsylvania state court sided with Republicans contesting the state results. The judge halted further certification of the state's election results, temporarily. The win, though far from reversing the projected nationwide win for presumed President-elect Joseph R. Biden, kept alive Mr. Trump's claims that widespread mishandling of ballots tainted results in states such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers in Pennsylvania held a hearing on accusations of rampant fraud and irregularities in the vote counting. "All that we ask is that you listen to the facts we are presenting and then evaluate it," said Rudolph Giuliani, the lead lawyer for the Trump campaign legal team. "We don't want to disenfranchise anyone." Mr. Giuliani presented witnesses who said that despite their jobs as designated Republican poll watchers, they were prevented from inspecting mail-in ballots in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and elsewhere in the state. Ironically enough, I watched 5 days straight, 12-hour live stream from a fellow content creator on a level I've yet to achieve, the amazing Lucas, shout out. And he was very thorough. He went from CNN to MSNBC to ABC. At one point was on C-SPAN. He tried to, gather as much information from the spectrum of mainstream media as possible. And I saw on Fox News, of all places, a GOP poll watcher, masked up and all, at the poll, talking about how they were allowed in, and he's not sure why the GOP is decreeing that poll watchers are being refused entry. And I mean, that's not the only time that that's occurred. So I do want to point out, just for the sake of context, that you have the losing side claiming that GOP poll watchers were not allowed in. Then you have GOP poll watchers saying that they were. And that's pretty much where that stands. Another witness who performed a data analysis testified that there appeared to be manipulation of ballot tabulation. And you also have a lot of that. A lot of statisticians, a lot of data analysts coming out and talking about different mathematical anomalies. And I hear you. The problem is that presenting mathematical anomalies it is an insinuation, it is a suggestion, but it's not evidence of fraud. It's evidence of an anomaly. And anomalies can occur organically. Perhaps enough people came out, more people voted against. Because again, you saw the margin so slim that it seems people didn't necessarily vote for Biden, but against Trump. So, it's an unfortunate path to take when you use statisticians and you try to bring up anomalies as a vehicle for claiming fraud and irregularity. Because all someone can say to you is, just because it hasn't happened before doesn't mean it can't happen, right? The hearing, which was hosted by the Pennsylvania State Majority Policy Committee, was informal and conducted at the Wyndham Hotel. State Senator David, I was like, So they had an informal meeting at a hotel, and from this informal meeting decided something quite astonishing and important. State Senator David Argall, chairman of the policy committee, said the event was intended to examine local, county, state, and federal conduct in the election. He noted that his office received tens of thousands of calls from constituents upset with the handling of the election. Mr. Trump planned to attend the event, but the White House canceled travel plans after another person on his team got sick. Yeah, what a surprise there. He did call by phone, calling them patriots, yada, yada, yada. So, fast forward 3 days later, and Pennsylvania's High Court allows state to complete certification. Pennsylvania Supreme Court allowed the state to complete its certification of the presidential vote won by Democrat Joe Biden, reversing a temporary delay ordered by a lower court judge and throwing out a challenge filed by state Republicans against a law that they supported backed during a GOP run state legislature. I just find I really just for the sake of everyone being able to identify the hilarious hypocrisy and macabre that is politics. If that lawsuit would have won, I feel like people's minds would have just exploded. Again, they would have had to have context, but unbelievable. But this is how exactly. So the High Court on Saturday rejected an attack on the state's mail voting law, saying Republicans waited too long to sue after the law was enacted last year. That's entirely the point here. It isn't necessarily the argument you're making is wrong, but it's evident that you're being opportunistic when you've made the argument now that you need to make it and not when you should have made it a year ago. Unreal. In a sharply worded order, the Supreme Court turned aside the extraordinary proposition that the court disenfranchise all 6.9 million Pennsylvanians who voted in the general election and threw the decision to the state legislature. On November 25th, Commonwealth Court Judge Patricia McCullough blocked any additional steps needed for certification while she considered the case, which was filed by state Republicans led by U.S. Representative Mike Kelly on an expedited basis. Governor Tom Wolf and Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, both Democrats, appealed the order to the state's top court. McCullough's ruling came after the state certified the vote in favor of Biden. It's unclear exactly what further steps in the process could have been delayed, but the plaintiffs suggested there were several, including the Assembly of Electors. The Electoral College vote to certify the November 3rd election results doesn't take place until December 14th. The case is unrelated to one brought by President Donald Trump's campaign, rejected by a federal appeals court on Friday, that sought to undo Pennsylvania's certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory in the Keystone State. The campaign has said that it will try to have the case heard by the Supreme Court. That's what I mean. There's things happening on the lower levels that are being brought up by representatives, and then there's the overarching battle hymn being sung by Donald Trump's campaign. Unless this U.S. Supreme Court intervenes in the Pennsylvania challenge, Trump may have no further means of persuading courts there to override the results in a state that was critical to his re-election hopes. Biden won Pennsylvania by more than 80,000 votes, and with it, 20 electoral votes. In Saturday's ruling, 2 Supreme Court judges said the Republicans could be correct that the mail-in voting law may have violated the state constitution, but all the judges said a court could neither invalidate the results nor halt the certification process at this point. You waited too long. You waited too long because you're being opportunistic. See, that's the thing about, the truth. The truth can be the truth. The truth is the truth, regardless of anything else. But how the truth is manipulated, wielded, used to obscure or create a new narrative, it's a totally different story. Because the reality is, and I love that. I love that. The judge is like, you actually may have a point, but you waited too long. And it's pretty clear why you waited as long as you did. So no, we're not going to, just no. I mean, and honestly, I think that is the best way to kind of fall between both both tensions, both energies, because you want to follow the letter of the law regardless of whether it ends up with the result people want. But you also want to have nuance, right, in your choices and in your decisions and in your explanation of them. And that's a perfect deduction. That's a perfect breakdown. You waited too long. Sure, you may have a point, but you waited too long, especially given everything that's happening right now. So with that said, yeah, more, and that's the thing. That's why I've chosen to try and let some of the situations in different states develop and take place, because there's pretty rapid changes that are happening, and you definitely don't want to be caught trying to rectify something you just reported on. That's not fun. But anyway, if you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe, share the video, and yeah, take care, be well to each other.